Testing 1 2, microphone check 1 2 3.
Whereas the people of the territory of the United States south of the River Ohio, having the right of admission into the general government as a member state thereof, consistent with the Constitution of the United States and the Act of Cession of the State of North Carolina, recognizing the ordinance for the government of the territory of the United States northwest of the Ohio River, by their delegates and representatives in convention assembled, did on the 6th day of February in the year of our Lord 1796 ordain and establish a constitution or form of government, and mutually agreed with each other to form themselves into a free and independent state by the name of the State of Tennessee. And whereas the General Assembly of the said State of Tennessee, pursuant to the third section of the 10th article of the Constitution, by an act passed on the 27th day of November, in the year of our Lord 1833, entitled
Testing 1 2, microphone check 1 2 3.
about drum supplies with the baby. Talk to her for like a week. So that's why I said, you know, when you tell her to slow down, I said,
Members, this meeting of the House Government Operations Committee for April 7th, 2025 will come to order. Clerk, would you please take the roll? And members, make sure you're signed in. All right, I think we got clerk call the roll, please.
Mr. Chairman, there are 12 members present. You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Members, before we get started, do we have any personal orders for the day? All right, seeing none. We're going to take the calendar out of order just a little bit today. The first item we're going to take is going to be mine. My vice chairman has to take off to present a bill a little bit later. So, Chairman, we're going to pass you the gavel for item number 23, House Bill 285, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I get a motion and a second on the bill? We've got a motion and a second. Chairman Lafferty, you're recognized on your bill, sir.
Thank you very much. Members, at our February 24 rule review, oh, I'm sorry, excuse me one second. Sorry about that. All right, thank you, Chairman Reedy. This is for our rule omnibus bill. It takes permanent rules, all rules filed last year that were given a positive recommendation from the Joint Government Operations Rule Review Committee. I do have an amendment, but before we vote on that amendment, I would like to discuss it for just a moment, if it pleases the committee.
Stand by, Mr. Chairman. At one time, it is a proposed amendment. I need a motion and a second for it to be heard. We've got a motion second. Chairman Lafferty, you're recognized on your amendment, and that's that 4138. Oh, let me back up. All in favor of the proposed amendment? Right, but we hit stand by.
Thank you, Chairman. At our February 24 rule review, a rule was presented to regulate bare knuckle boxing in this state, which generated a good deal of discussion. At this meeting, a voice vote was taken on a positive recommendation on the rule, a hearing, and I heard the louder no's than I did yays, and I ruled that the motion failed, sending the rule out with a negative recommendation in the House only. The Senate voted for a positive recommendation. That negative recommendation became the amendment I'm presenting now, but in a rare move, committee, I'm here to ask you to please vote against my amendment. I'm in favor of the regulation of combat sports such as bare knuckle boxing in this state. I will be voting against this amendment to allow for the regulation of the sport. That being said, when I heard more nay votes than ayes, I ruled that the noes had it. As at the will of the committee, I'm before you with this amendment. If it is still your will, I will move this bill forward with this amendment, but please also note that the Senate does not have any amendments on this bill. And if we should amend this bill, it will more than likely go to conference committee, which we want to avoid. So I will be voting against this amendment. Mr. Chairman.
I've got quite the list started up. Representative McKenzie, you're first on my list, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a extremely unusual move because I do understand your personal sentiment, but this body voted and you affirmed the body's vote. So you can't begin to understand the number of times that I've lost a vote that I feel personally responsible for and hating that it moves on, but the will of the body moved. And so for us to undo that simply because we don't want to have a conversation with the Senate about something that's very serious. Again, we had a lot of conversation. This wasn't a up or down kind of a bill. We talked about bare knuckle boxing and the dangers that it had. We deliberated over it, and we came to what I would consider the correct decision for the House. I hear constantly about we're not the Senate, but now we're going to let the Senate dictate how we perform. We had a vote for a positive recommendation. I mean, for a negative recommendation, sorry. Now you want to undo that to basically create an amendment that creates a false positive recommendation. I guess I would ask if we should go out of session to even see if this is something that I could see us reconsidering. I could see a lot of things, but for us to create an amendment to create a false positive recommendation when we clearly said we wanted a negative recommendation.
Chairman Lafferty?
I'm sorry, was there a question in that?
Representative McKenzie?
Yes. Why would we do this why would the chairman of the Government Operations Committee, the person who is in charge of how we behave and how we recommend men, and you make the final call, when your gavel goes down, it's the final call. Why would the chairman of this committee want to undo his action in a way that's not, I would say, the way that it should be? I guess you could force this into Masons. This committee deliberated, you made a call. Why shouldn't that call not stand and we have a conference committee or whatever it takes to hash this thing out?
Representative McKenzie, the question I heard that you had was to go out of session to hear on this proposed amendment. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Is it the will of this committee to go out? No. We've got no's.
You got one no. You got 8 no.
Could I take a crack at this real quick?
Chairman Lafferty, you're
Chairman.
recognized.
All right, from the description, I'm sure, Representative McKenzie, you didn't mean to make it sound like I was doing something nefarious here. I don't think that was your intent. What we did when we gave a negative recommendation was start a process in which we would later have to amend the bill from which we removed those rules. What we have before us today is that amendment.
So at this time, I'll recognize Chairman Faison.
Move his amendment to the table.
We've got a motion to move the amendment to the table. Can I get a second? We've got a motion and a second. All in favor of moving this amendment to the table signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Move to the table. Now we're back on the bill, HB 285. Chairman Lafferty.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. I renew my motion on the bill.
Question, Representative Parkinson, you're recognized on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to the sponsor, can you tell me what the bill does now absent the amendment?
Chairman Lafferty, you're recognized.
It makes permanent all the rules that it makes permanent all the rules that we passed almost over the last 12 months. Yeah. All the rules that we passed. It's the rule omnibus bill.
Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further questions? Representative Hardaway on the bill, sir.
No, I apologize, Chairman, but I need that clarification again. This vote without the amendment as opposed to this vote with the amendment,
Chairman Lafferty.
the distinction.
So we already voted on the omnibus bill. One of the rules that would have been in the omnibus bill would have been for the state to regulate ungloved boxing. Some people refer to that as bare knuckle boxing. What this amendment will do is strip those parts of the rules from the rules omnibus bill.
That's right. Representative Hardaway, further questions?
Yes, sir. Same question, but will we have bare knuckle fighting? I guess is the simplest way to ask it.
I'm
Chairman
sorry, say that
Lafferty?
again. I missed the first part of that. My apologies.
Will we have bare knuckle fighting with the vote on this up or down? Will it allow bare knuckle fighting?
Yes.
So would a yes vote allow, a no vote disallow, or this is merely on the rules?
The no vote would be what would allow this rule, the regulation of bare knuckle boxing, to stay in the rule omnibus bill.
To stay in the omnibus?
My apologies.
Back to Chairman Lafferty.
My apologies. This is territory I've not treaded in before. So we tabled the amendment. The amendment is no more.
Right.
So now we are just voting on the rule omnibus bill. Which includes these rules.
Members, stand by for a moment. I'm going to go to Chairman Faison that chaired this committee for some time. Give us clarification. Chairman Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee, I'll lay out what we've done. Over the last 12 months, this committee has met and heard all the rules from all the different departments of state and all the licensing agents. This bill that we're voting on right now is the rules that have been promulgated for the last 12 months. Recently, there was going to be a rule added to it. The House didn't like the way the Senate was doing. We voted separate than them, which generates an amendment to the rule omnibus bill. There's very few times that happens. I just laid that amendment on the table and we voted to table it. Now we're just back on the same bill, rule omnibus bill that we've had been generating for the last 12 months. That's all we're doing.
Representative Hardaway, did you have further questions, sir?
Yes, sir. And it might be that I need legal, because my question is pretty simple, whether we're going to have bare knuckle fighting. And if so, will it be because we vote yes or vote no, or will it make any difference? Will the only difference in voting yes or no be a determination of whether we have rules for the same?
So at this time, I'm going to go out of session. We'll recognize legal.
Alexander Greenberg, Office of Legal Services. So the rule omnibus bill has all of the state agency rules passed in the past year. When the joint committee voted a negative recommendation for the bare knuckle boxing rule, the amendment was generated. I believe the amendment was just tabled. So what's being voted on now is the rule omnibus bill as bare knuckle boxing is currently being regulated. So what's being voted on is not stripping bare knuckle boxing from the rule. Bare knuckle boxing will be included in the rule omnibus bill.
So any questions for legal from any of the members at this time? Seeing none, we're back in. Representative Hardaway, let me go to Representative Parkinson and I'll come back to you.
I'm good.
You're good. Representative Clements, questions, comments?
I just wanted clarification. This is the omnibus rule bill. It's pretty straightforward, and it does include all the rules with regard to the voucher bill and all those types of rules that we've adopted in the past year. That's correct, Mr. Chairman?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Chairman. Representative Hardaway, are we good now? we're good. We've got a motion for a positive recommendation and a second. Question's been called. Clerk, please open the board for the vote. Everyone cast your vote. Anyone wish to change your vote? Clerk, please announce the vote.
Mr. Chairman, the vote is 10 ayes and 6 noes.
The bill moves out to calendar and rules with a positive recommendation. Chairman Lafferty, the gavel is yours, sir.
Thank you, Chairman, for pulling me through that. I appreciate you. Let's see. All right, next up, we're back to the start of the calendar. We have item number 1, House Bill 322. I'm sorry, 1322. And looks like Chairman White's going to be presenting that today. We have a motion and a second. Chairman White, you are recognized, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Committee. And do we need to add the amendment? Or are we okay on the amendment?
It's traveling with.
Okay, 4910. Thank you very much. So, Chairman Committee, thank you for the opportunity. Let me give you a little background of what this bill is about. It's dealing with our state's charter schools. I want to kind of, before I get into the 5 things that this particular bill does, this is an administration bill. But back in 2002, the General Assembly voted to allow charters to come into Tennessee. But at the time, it was capped at I think maybe no more than 10 statewide. I came in 2010. I think it's 2011 or 2012. I actually got to carry the bill where we expanded charter schools. We took the cap off. And as we began to build charter schools in Tennessee, eventually I think it was around 2018, I may have my year off, we created the Charter School Commission. Why did we do that? Because we wanted only the best charters to come. A charter school, by the way, is a fully public school, but it can be closed down if there's low performance in that charter, unlike our traditional public schools. And so that brought us to this point. Today, Tennessee charter schools have demonstrated one of the highest average academic growths in the nation, despite serving students with the greatest needs. In 2023, charter schools are in TVAS scores of 4s and 5s at significantly higher rates than traditional public schools. 63% of charter schools earned a 4 and 5 compared to 38% of our traditional public schools. The growth is particularly significant considering that on average, Tennessee charter students enter into the schools with lower achievement levels compared to the national charter sector. Approximately 52% of the students who attend a Tennessee public charter school are economically disadvantaged. 9% are either Black, Hispanic, or Native American. And during this 22-23 school year alone, Tennessee charter schools served over 44,000 students, roughly 5% of the student population, and about 9% of the state's Black, Hispanic, and Native American population. So the point being, the reason we're bringing the bill, the demand is growing, but yet the supply is limited. And what this particular bill does is opens up a little flexibility in our charters. It does 5 things in this bill. It allows our public colleges and universities may apply directly to the commission to sponsor a charter in their region, or they can go directly to the LEA. The second thing it does is the renewal flexibility. Right now, whenever a charter school, once they're approved, the application process, they're approved for up to 10 years. When it comes time for the renewal process, they either have to turn the charter down and or give them another 10 years. The Charter Commission wants flexibility to say, well, you're doing well, but we don't want to give you a 10-year extension. We're going to give you a 5-year. We can either turn you down, or we can give you a 5-year renewal or a 10-year renewal. That's the second item it does. The third thing it does, we don't want anyone playing politics in a district with our school system. If a local school board has 3 decisions, overturned by the commission within a 3-year period of time, then the charter application may be made directly to the commission for up to the next 5 years. Item number 4, a replication authority this bill particularly gives is that once a charter has been approved, goes through the intense charter application to become a charter in an LEA or by the Charter Commission in a district. They've gone through a complex process. Once they have been in operation for 1 year, then if they want to duplicate that, charter within that district. Again, they can go through a replication process, which still you got to go through an application, but not so intense because they've got that 1-year history and already been approved once. And then the last thing it does, it just turns over key responsibilities of oversight from the Department of Education to the Charter Commission, such as reviewing applications, monitoring performance, public reports, kind of centralize things on the commission instead of for DOE, where there'd be kind of a duplication of process. That's what the bill does. And with that, we'll open up some discussion. I do have the department here, the administration here. If we get into some specific questions that I cannot answer, we do have them here available to speak.
Thank you for that explanation. Members, do we have any questions? Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the sponsor. You mentioned a couple things. One, you mentioned the Charter Commission was set up to bring in good performing charter schools. But I remember when we were working on that legislation, I actually sat on a committee with you, and it was pitched as a commission to hear appeals for when LEAs didn't approve charter schools. Am I incorrect in that, or did something change between then and now?
Chairman White.
Well, originally during that particular time, the charters were being approved either by the LEA or it went through the state board on the appeals. The state board didn't have the personnel where they really, as we expanded charters, were able to handle that. So that's why the discussion began. Let's create a board that can focus specifically on charters to make sure that, I think we did at the time, stand to be corrected, they could appeal. If they were turned down by the local, then they could appeal to the Charter Commission at that particular time. I think you are correct on that.
Yeah. Thank you. And Mr.
Representative Hardaway, you got to follow up?
I am not Representative Hardaway.
I'm sorry,
Mr. Chair.
Representative Parkinson, my apologies.
I want that stricken from the record.
Yes. Noted.
Right. I think we need to go on the board on that one, Mr. Chair. But you also mentioned that charter schools were outperforming the traditional public schools. I think that's an important statement. And I think that may be the core of your pitch for this bill. Now with that, what years was that data pulled from to make that statement that charter schools outperform traditional public schools? So what we're talking about is those public schools in Franklin, those public schools in Williamson County, those public schools in Shelby, Knox. Where did this data come from that says those charter schools outperform traditional public schools?
Chairman White.
The data I was given, this is 2023.
Okay.
One last follow-up. We got a few others on the list, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. 1 year of data to justify that statement. That's a strong statement that charters outperformed traditional public schools. And what the data that you're leaving out is all of the data of Tennessee's charter schools, which performed under the state-run school district, which underperformed the worst performing schools in our entire state. So I'm not understanding how that data, when we collect 3 years of data to determine if a school is underperforming, and yet you said 1 year of data, 2023, which excludes all of the failed state-run school districts, and that would not justify, that statement of charter schools outperforming traditional public schools. And since it's my last time I can speak, I also want to ask, you said they only need 1 year of data to replicate. We've always been, looking at 3 years of data, for all of our schools. Well, when we give them T-BOS scores, we look at 3 years of data. And so if you're looking at 1 year based on what you just said, I think that's going counter to our normal practice of collecting data. But more importantly, why is it that we're excluding the state-run achievement, the state school district that was all charters for the most part, that failed miserably in this data to come with the statement that charters outperform traditional public schools when we know that that has not happened.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. What I was indicating, I just said in 2023. I wasn't talking about 3 years ago. I said in 2023, charter schools earned TVAC scores of 4s and 5s, which is at a significantly higher rate than our traditional public schools. I would just making that statement that the thing about charters is that we can close a charter down if it's low performing. One thing that we have never been able to do to a traditionally public school, if it continues to, which is, Chairman, if I can continue on that. One reason the ASD was established, we passed the bill the other day that we are eliminating the ASD. But one reason the ASD was established is because for decade after decade, we had the schools that were low performing in the bottom 5%, and nothing ever changed. So it was actually, listen, I'm trying to explain to you, please. We actually put something in place to try to correct that. It was a great attempt for 10 years to do that. And then when they were, a lot of them turned over to charters. All the charter is an option in the community to where for those parents who need another choice also. And so I'm just giving you data. Charters, not every charter it does great, just like every public school, but a charter can be closed if it's not being done. And the other part was about, I think you're talking about replication, where if they have been approved through that intense process, either through the LEA and or the Charter Commission, and they have already applied and gone through that process, if they want to replicate that, open up another school in that same district, they don't have to go through the intense process again. They still had to go through a process to make sure that everything's on board, but they just don't have to go through this. It makes it easier to open up a second one if they're already established in that community.
Representative Parkinson, please, last one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is there was in 2023 there was still charter schools in the ASD. And I would venture to say, without even looking at the data, that charter school did not receive a 4 or a 5. And let me be clear, I'm not anti-charter. My daughter went to a charter school, so let's not put that bag on me. I'm not. But these blanket statements that all charters received a 4 or 5, even in 2023, is just factually untrue. And then for us to exclude the 41 schools, 41. That were under the control of the state of Tennessee that performed dismally. I know our reason for creating ASD was, so we can create some competition. I remember all of the marketing. However, those 41, for the most part, 90% of those schools failed, and they performed worse than the schools that they took over. And I think that's important to know. And I think my thing is this: if we're going to have this conversation about charter schools, Star Academy, great charter school. My daughter went there. If we're going to have this conversation, I think we need to tell the entire story about the performance of charter schools and not, gloss it over and look at the year 2023 when you had folded most of the schools in the Achievement School District, right? So if you went back 2022, 2021, you have an entirely different picture, a snapshot of what charter schools really look like in the state of Tennessee. And so I thank you for that, Mr. Chair. Appreciate you.
Okay, thank you. Chairman White, you're recognized.
Just one quick response. Let me correct if it wasn't clear. What I said is 63% of the charter schools earned a 4 or 5 compared to 38% of traditional public. That was my comment.
Thank you for that. And it's also, there was a little bit of back and forth about schools under what designation, public, charter, what have you. It's education starts with the family at home. I think that's important to be said in this day and time. Let's go. And excuse me, we got a nice crowd out here. And for the most part, everybody's been pretty nice and quiet. And I appreciate it if we could stay that way. The snaps, the laughs, things like that. If we could please minimize that, sure would appreciate that. I don't need to have any other troubles. Thank you. Next up on our list, we've got Chairman Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. In part of the presentation on this legislation, the history of charters in Tennessee was represented. I just want to make sure that we're clear on the history of charters in Tennessee. Charters in Tennessee started in a bipartisan manner as a laboratory for teaching techniques that could be adopted if successful, and that's why they were limited. But unfortunately, they were unlimited because people figured out how to make money off of them. Public taxpayer money. And so once people figured out how to set up real estate investment trusts and make money on these charter schools, all of a sudden they became unlimited. Now, once they become unlimited, then the state decides it's going to establish a state charter school commission. And then a couple of years later, we came back around and decided that state charter school commission, because LEAs who are responsible for their local budgets, who are responsible for fully funding their public schools to the extent they're able with federal and state dollars, they were rejecting some of these charters because they were not performing. They were not providing good applications. They were not providing any proof of ability to educate our children. So the State Charter School Commission was given power to override the LEAs. And so our elected officials at the local level in charge with that budget were then basically neutered by the state commission, which has been appointed full of charter school advocates, mostly former charter school board members and SCORE advocates and appointees by the past two governors. So now, here we are, giving them another opportunity to circumvent local elected officials and steer more money out of public schools into others just based on the de facto presence of an existing charter school. That is fiscally reckless. It's fiscally irresponsible, takes away a lot of the transparency in the process.
Chairman Clemens, is there a question?
Oh, yeah, of course there is. So the issue here is why are we continuing to take power away from our locally elected officials? We're not only steering more money through TISA out of our local public schools into these charter schools, but now we're here again going to rubber stamp future schools just because they have managed to circumvent LEAs the first time around, got approved by the state commission who overrode the locals, and now because the state overrode local officials, they automatically get a second one without any further say by the LEA. That is inherently problematic on multiple levels for local governments who are responsible for their budget. Why do we want to keep creating this problem for our LEAs and our local officials who are constrained financially?
Chairman White, you're recognized.
I think the entire object is, most of the charters, and I'm from the community of Shelby and Memphis area schools, and most of the charters have been established there where we have had a lot of low performing schools. And it does give a parent options whenever they are in a traditional public school that has not been performing for, so it gives another option to the parent. And we can go back and forth on the history and how we kind of see things, but I just believe that it's an option in a community where options have been limited. And if the parent makes that choice, it is a fully public school, as we both know. It's just where the money can follow the child from that traditional public school into a charter to see if the management of that charter can do a better job than what the traditional public school is doing for that particular district in that particular LEA.
Representative Clemens, you're recognized.
Well, thank you for that. And we can go around and around on this false narrative of school choice, but this isn't about school choice. This is about overriding locally elected officials, because these charter schools, because of the history and where we are with state law today, is they're not writing applications for the viewership or opinion of the LEA anymore. They're writing them for the State Charter School Commission because they don't care what the LEA says. They only care what this handpicked board at the state level thinks. And they know they're going to get rubber stamped. And so we've created a really bad system here under this false narrative of school choice. All we're doing is just allowing anybody who wants to set up any run-of-the-mill charter in any given county to come in and do so. And now you want to, just because they circumvented the local authority, got rubber stamped by the state authority, you want to allow them to automatically get a second, a third, or a fourth one just because they managed to navigate the crooked system on the front end. This is not beneficial to children. This is not about school choice. This is about steering money into private hands without any oversight by locally elected officials who are responsible. At the end of the day, the buck stops with them on funding those schools and apportioning those dollars to those schools. So we are creating a system set up for failure. We're not providing more choice. We're providing more choice for investors and more opportunity to make money. But that doesn't equal school choice. That's the inherent problem here. So why are we continuing to rig this system in favor of steering money into private hands when there is no data to support that charter schools are providing a better education for our students?
Chairman
And
White,
all
you're
the
right.
charter
I'm sorry, I heard a question. Did you had the question of why is it being rigged? Was that your question? Chairman Clemens, was that your question? Why is it rigged?
Well, my question, yeah, well, why are we doing this? Why are we continuing to do this to the detriment of our students with no proven outcomes of a better education?
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman White, if you want to tackle that.
Yeah, just briefly, that's where we would differ. I think there's a lot of groups out there who have a vital interest in improving education, and that's where a lot of them do. That's why we put in the legislation originally that one could be closed down if it wasn't performing. Unlike traditional public school, you cannot do that. It goes on decade after decade with no opportunity to change. I just believe that there always will be bad actors in anything, just like there are in traditional public schools. But I believe that there are a lot of good actors in this, looking for better ways to educate a child whenever there's a low-performing district.
Thank you for that explanation. And I might add too, we heard a lot of conflation with REITs and corporations making money. If we called those corporations not-for-profits or 501c3s, which they are in most cases, maybe that would settle some of the hostility toward it. But that wasn't what just. Next up, we have Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Chairman. You started talking about corporations and all that, and I'm still trying to get over the trauma of looking at the tariff tax market and stock market.
Let's stay on the bill.
Hadn't brought that up.
All right, Representative Hardaway, on the bill, please.
All right. And good morning, Chairman.
Good morning.
For those who don't know, Mark is a dear friend, even before he was elected. Might not sound like that after these questions. All right. First, we go back, and the initial charter authorization was a pilot program, and I supported it. And I supported it because it was, as the Chairman Clemens said, it was a laboratory effort to determine best practices for those charters existing and any future charters that would be considered. I want to make sure that that's on the record. The cap was on there so we could collect best practices and make them available. And I'm concerned, we had the ASD. I know you're tired of talking about the ASD, but it was real. And that performance was incredibly destructive to the future of those children, most of the children who attended. And I'm wondering, since we've already experienced the state running a local charter as opposed to the local board and the parents having the input, direct input, along with the rest of the community through their election of the local board, why would we take a chance of skipping the local board, the LEA, and going into essentially it's just a more convoluted version of an ASD if the initial process and the appeals are going to come straight to the state?
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, and thank you for your comments. And like I say, friendship is always first. We carry policies up here, and that's what we're debating. Well, remember this, that the process that's in place still stays in place. An LEA still has first bite of the apple. The part that I mentioned that this bill changes, that if a local school district has had 3 decisions overturned by the commission within 3 years, that's when this thing would kick in place, that they could apply directly to the commission. But right now, it still goes directly to the district. But only if a district says, we just don't want charters, we're going to turn all of them down. If they continue to be, and the commission may turn down the 3 that the locals did. This just says if they've had 3 decisions overturned by the commission within 3 years, then this was where that would kick in.
All right, and those
Follow-up?
Yes, sir. Those clarification on your response. Those decisions would not have to be on any particular charter or type of charter. Just it could be 3 different charters. Is that what you're saying?
Chairman White?
From what I understand that, and if we need DO up here, I will ask for that. But if 3 decisions have been, if a charter has applied to a local LEA for application, and 3 of those have been turned down, and they have been turned down, make sure I get my wording right. If a local school board has had 3 decisions overturned by the commission within 3 years.
All right, and
Chairman Hardaway?
thank you. When we skip the LEAs for the approval, are we also skipping the LEAs for evaluations and possible terminations on those same charters? It's only up to the state.
Chairman White?
If I'm following your question right, if a charter is approved by an LEA, they are the authorizer and they have the authority. If a charter is approved by the commission, then they are the authorizer of that charter. It would stay with them.
Fine follow-up, please.
All right, that was my question. I'm unsure as to why we want to adopt a process that will take, and I think it may have been the chairman who said that the families are those who are more apt to make the good decisions on education. And then the further we get away from the LEA, the further we get away from the influence and the expressions of the family through their elected officials. So I'm concerned that our legislation belies the true intent. If the intent is to provide better educational opportunities, world-class educational opportunities for our students, taking this decision-making on and replicating, in essence, a process that has proven itself to be deficient, proven itself to fail using the ASD. And there are some, I'm sure you'll be able to pull up data on some other charters which were approved by the state, which did not do well. But I'm concerned that we're once again snatching control from our local folks and putting it into the hands 200 miles away, into the hands of folks who don't know the pulse of the community, don't know the feel, the culture, the things that could and do contribute to the success, not only of charter schools, but to the success of all of the academic institutions. So thank you.
Chairman White, you want to reply?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. And not to misconstrue any words, I think you just proved my point. You said the further we get away from the family of the local district, this you always want to give choices to families. That's what we have done in Tennessee lately. You want to give choice first to the family. I, like you, being from Memphis, and my other colleague up here from Memphis, we know that there are some schools in some areas that are not performing well for that child. And that would be true across the board anywhere. But we know that. So give that family a choice. If a charter has made application in that area and has opened a school, let's give that family a choice. And that's all we're trying to do with the legislation that we've got before us.
Representative Towns, you're recognized. We've got a lot of people on the list here still. Let's, if we've got some time, we'll come back to you. Representative Towns.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Representative, thank you for your efforts as it relates to this bill, but I have a couple of questions. Hopefully you can give me some clarity on. We talked about ASD a little bit ago, and just at some point how unsuccessful it became. Now, ASD was around for a number of years, and in the process, obviously, the bill of goods that were sold to the constituents and people there that was going to do a fantastic job for the people, yet it didn't make the mark. And that means those kids were hurt. They were damaged because we did not succeed. And that's on the leaders and the administrators who, ran that program. Unfortunately, many of those young people may not ever recover when the guys is what we're trying to give them an opportunity at a better education, and we all should have that. The question is, does this bill, if passed, does this reconfigure in any form the ASD?
Chairman White.
The last part, absolutely no. It has nothing to do with the two.
Okay.
Let me push back a little bit on you on the ASD. You say that it damaged those kids. Now, these children were in the bottom 5% to begin with. And at that particular time, there had been nothing attempt by the local LEA to change that. Whether they're always trying to do their best or not is beside the point. So it was an honest attempt to address the bottom 5% priority schools, low performing schools. There had not been that attempt before. So for 10 years we attempted, and we found out that it's very, very hard. And that is why our own Memphis Shelby County Schools eventually created the I-Zone schools. That was done to keep those schools from ever going into the ASD. And they pumped a lot of money, put their best teachers in it, the same way the ASD tried to do at the beginning. But it's a very hard needle to turn. A lot of these students, as you know, being from the area we are, low performing economically, and there's a lot of transition moving around. They may be in this part of town this month and other part of town next month due to rent issues and all that kind of stuff. So it was an honest attempt to address the bottom 5%. So if we had not done anything and left them there, I don't know how you can say we damaged them any more than they already were. I think it was a good attempt, and there probably was a lot of good done. Now we've seen that. Now we're continuing to move forward.
Representative Towns, any follow-up?
Yeah, of course. And I appreciate that, that explanation. But when the state or whomever, comes in and make an offer that you can't refuse, we're looking for it to pan out. Regardless of where they were currently at that particular point, they switched because they thought they were going to get a better deal. Now, you had some better deals, I-Zone. Okay, you had some better deals probably with optional schools. You had some better deals that were there. Admin service. You had a lot of options. There are options in the school system as we speak today. Okay, now I understand, quote me if I'm wrong, somebody correct me. We spent a couple of $1 billion, $2 billion, maybe a little bit more. In other words, it's like this, minimal or no return, but it's like this. And we've lived long enough to see a lot of experiments tried with public education, with our country's kids, all across the country, different kinds of schemes. And it ended up netting people getting rich and walking away. But I look at it like this, Mr. Representative, that a pilot can't afford to have a bad day. When you're in that airplane, he needs to be 100% or she needs to be 100% of the time. If not, we all going to have a bad day. Now, the country has a bad day eventually because the kids are not there, productive, to be able to do what we need them to do to generate an economy, to bring the things we want them to do for this country. This is very serious business, as we know. You're an educator, you've done stuff around the country and the world to attest to that, and all that is good, but we have to get it right. Now,
Got a question
how
in the
many
future?
charter schools do we have in Tennessee?
Chairman White, you're recognized.
roughly?
I want to say it's, I may stand to be corrected, 50 plus, 55, something like that. I think most of them are in Shelby County, 40 in the 40s in Shelby County. I don't say around mid 50s if I may stand to be corrected.
I'm with you on that.
Towns?
Yes, sir. I'm with you on that. Now, this is where the rubber meets the road. I hope you can give me some accuracy on this. Every time there's a kid that attends one of the charter schools, certainly there's dollars that leave the schools. How much money has been taken out of it? While these are public charter schools, but the core public school, how much money has been taken out of core public schools across the state at this point? How much money has been diverted because of charter schools?
Chairman White, it seems to me that since a public charter school is just that, a public school, the dollars are, it's dollar for dollar. There's no loss to the LEA. Am I correct?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Once again, it's a public school with an option. Let me say this real quick. I know we're going on long. I know there's other bills the committee's got to deal with. Aren't we fortunate in Shelby County that state cared enough to spend billions of dollars trying to address an issue for our low performing students?
Absolutely.
Aren't we blessed? And the iZone schools that the Memphis Shelby County schools started, they did quite well as long as the LEA pumped the money in and the best teachers. When they pulled that back, then they went down.
Representative Towns,
Well,
could you last follow up, please?
Yeah, look, and Mr. Chairman, I appreciate your attempt to answer the question, but I didn't get the answer that I want. I'm looking for raw dollars. These are two different, while one, there's still two different systems, okay? And I want the number on the money at some point. I mean, the chairman can't do it now, we'll get it later. And the fact of it is that there's a certain amount of money that leaves the school system. And yes, we're fortunate that we were able to do certain things, but we're also still behind, Mr. Representative, because we've never funded the school system fully. We've never funded them. So if you're already behind and then we do a little bit, yeah, we're grateful for that. Yes, sir, we are. And we should be, but we're still not up to par. The key of it is we got to figure out how, and if I said it before and I said it again, and I don't dislike charter schools, but I can bet you I can find more magic in a bottle of old charter for some of these schools than I can regular charter schools because they have failed in certain respects. And if they work, what we're supposed to do is to make every school system work. Can't let a handful of kids get it. I want to see all my kids get it. You know, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we've got Representative Mayberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question on the bill.
The question has been called. We do have objection. All right, we'll go, just so that we don't confuse anything, we'll go on the board for previous question. Clerk, would you open the board? Members, if you're in favor of moving previous question, please vote aye. Everybody voted? Anybody want to change a vote? No? All right. Clerk, please announce the vote.
Mr. Chairman, the vote is 9 ayes and 6 noes.
All right. Question is called on the bill then. Members, we ready to vote? Oh, I'm sorry, clerk, prepare the board again. Members, please make your vote. One sec. All right, has everybody voted? Anybody want to change a vote? Looks like everybody's voted. Clerk, call the vote, please.
Mr. Chairman, the vote is 8 ayes, 6 noes, and 1 present not voting.
Thank you for that. Chairman White, your bill passes out to calendar and rules. And we have a question, Representative Parkinson.
Mr. Chair, what exactly were we voting on that vote? Because there was no motion made. Were we voting on favorable or anything like that, or was it just on the bill itself?
We started off with the motion a second.
On positive, for a positive recommendation?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I didn't hear it. I'm sorry. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. All right, next bill up, we have House Bill 1325. It's item number 2 on your calendar today, and that is being presented by Representative Vital. We have a motion and a second. Representative Vital, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. I'm here on behalf of House Bill 1325, the Tennessee Farmland Preservation Fund. For the last several years, the governor has looked for ways to help Tennesseans across the board, from job creation to economic prosperity. And this bill is about the love of land and the desire to safeguard our natural state for future generations. Tennessee has a rich agricultural heritage, and it is part of the economic activity. As you look at our seal, you see that agriculture and commerce are mentioned. Both have been important in our history. Tennessee is ranked second in farmland loss, just behind Texas, which is projected to lose about 10 acres an hour, or about 240 acres a day. Between now and 2040, we are projected to lose about 2.4 million additional acres. Now Tennessee can provide farmers with a pathway to save their farm land and forest while preserving the family's economic opportunity. The Tennessee Farmland Preservation Act is a tool to apply for assistance for a conservation easement to be placed on their land. This program is completely voluntary, exercising the ultimate freedom of choice for farmers and families and the future of their land. A conservation easement does not mean they lose their land in any shape. It protects it for the future. You are still allowed to farm, hunt, fish, mortgage, sell, build, or expand your farm or property. 29 other states have done this to help protect farms and have conserved over 3.2 million acres. HB 1325 establishes the framework for a Tennessee Farmland Preservation Fund, providing funds for transactions to help farmers protect their land as part of the future of this great state. And with that, I will take questions, and the administration is here to answer any other questions also. Thank you.
Thank you for the explanation. Chairman Clemens, you're recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, I love the spirit of this legislation. I lost my farm, my family farm, and my family for generations would have loved to have been able to save it. But my question here is, what are we doing additionally with this legislation? I know there's $25 million being set aside. I'm curious as to what that $25 million is going to do, because we already have conservation programs. We already have the conservation easements. We already have the Forest Legacy Program. The Land Trust for Tennessee has a transaction assistance fund. So what additionally is this $25 million going to be used for?
Representative Vital.
Thank you for the question. Currently, voluntary conservation easements are used throughout the state by individuals who might work with the Land Trust for Tennessee or Foothills Conservancy. But the transaction costs are one of the things that would assist that in a more formal way. Currently, nonprofits have raised those funds to help individuals who wanted to save sensitive lands. This would provide funds for transaction costs. It would also assist with the acquisition of certain sensitive lands that might be saved or protected.
Chairman Clemens.
So is this money being specifically directed to that transaction assistance fund that already exists? Because they provide surveys, attorney's fees, they provide all that type of funding. So is this being directed specifically to that fund, or is this just giving the governor the ability to put it anywhere he wants? And with that, my other question is the governor excluded from benefiting from this program?
You're recognized.
I can't speak for the governor, but I'm sure the administration can speak to the question, but I'm sure that he would not want to do it himself. But the administration is here if we need to go out of.
Oh, yeah.
Chairman Clemens, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I'm more than happy to talk to the administration. Are they here?
Second. Motion go out of session. Second.
All right, it does look like we've got some people on the list here. We're going to go out of session, and we are looking for Mr. Alex Lewis, Miss Carol McDonald. Oh, hello, Alex.
Good morning, Chairman.
You've been through this before. If you would, please introduce yourself, tell us who you're with, and we'll open you up to questions.
Good morning, Chairman and committee. My name is Alex Lewis, here on behalf of Governor Lee.
All right, thank you for that. Chairman Clemens, did you want to start us off there?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is a one-time $25 million appropriation, and if the money isn't completely used, it just reverts to the next year for this specific purpose rather than go back into the general fund. So What is the administration's intent for this $25 million under this one-time thing? To which organization and which fund is it going to invest?
You're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. This fund, backing up as Representative Vidal said, this program would put us in line with 29 or 30 other states that have similar programs that are designed to help incentivize farm and forest owners to maintain their land for those purposes. So this program, it's before you today for the Department of Agriculture to promulgate rules to that end. To your specific question, the funding is a non-recurring appropriation in the budget that we've proposed that would be used to help either with the transaction costs, as Representative Vidal has described, and as you seem familiar, surveys, appraisals, legal fees, accounting fees, et cetera, for the landowner, but would also be eligible to help defray the difference in the value of the property between the market versus the use property. The federal government offers that sort of benefit, but oftentimes the transaction costs can be prohibitive to some families to participate. So this program would create a grant to the landowners themselves, not to the nonprofits who are in the space. So Land Trust for Tennessee, as you've mentioned, is a land trust here based in Davidson County that does a lot of this. They may have their own fundraising efforts to help some folks with those transaction costs, but this is designed to help others who may not already have a relationship with Land Trust for Tennessee.
Chairman Clemens, follow up.
Yeah, thank you. So what I'm hearing is this is a parallel grant program to the Land Trust for Tennessee or other, as well as the federal funds that are being used for this purpose. So we're setting up almost a third leg to provide the same services already being provided by the other organizations. And I don't inherently have an issue with that. I just want to know exactly kind of where we're directing these funds, how they're going to be directed, and why the state wants to repeat rather than invest in those that are doing it well. Because I don't think it's necessarily the relationship of farmers with the Land Trust Tennessee. To my knowledge, the Land Trust doesn't discriminate or have any bias towards anyone. So I don't know what the relationship issue is there to which you're referring. Our Department of Agriculture actually advertises that transaction assistance fund on its website, as well as the federal funds, as well as all the other programs. So I guess what I'm trying to get to is, why do we need another entity doing the same thing that's already being done? If we're going to invest $25 million, that's fine. I believe in investing to protect agricultural land and open space. But why aren't we just investing in somebody already doing it rather than reinventing the wheel and giving the governor the discretion to decide who gets this? It could be his own family. It could be anybody. So, and I don't see any limitations here on that. And so I don't know what the parameters are for how this department is going to decide to whom to give that money.
Mr. Lewis, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, so the legislation would create a fund that would incentivize farmers to enroll their property into a conservation easement. As you've described, that legal process already exists. Folks can negotiate with the Land Trust for Tennessee or any number of the other conservation groups that are in operation in the state, or there are nonprofits all across the country that help conserve this land. This is the state making an investment in those farmers or forest landowners to conserve their land. Then the department would create the competitive grant program. That's by rule, that's what would come back to this committee as they survey the 29 and 30 other states that have these programs to find the best way to ensure that this money is used most efficiently to conserve land in Tennessee.
Thank you for that response. Next on our list, we've got Representative Glenn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here, sir. I had a couple of questions. So if a farmer decides to enter this program, is it a one-time payment to the farmer, reoccurring, and can they opt out 10 years from now?
You're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. As we envision it now, this is not a recurring payment. This is a one-time grant that is given to the farmer or forest landowner to make this permanent decision. In the same way that selling land to a developer is a permanent decision, conserving land is a permanent decision, that the family that owns the land makes together.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So they would basically say, yes, I want it. They would get the money, and then they can no longer, that land would no longer be for sale. But can they then, I guess, double dip? So in other words, if the federal government decides to pay farmers because of the tariffs and countries are no longer accepting our products, so they're going to create a fund to pay farmers who farm, can they now dip into that federal money and get paid for that as well?
You're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. I certainly can't speak to the tariff discussion that's ongoing right now. But I will say, one, this program does not prohibit the sale of the property. This property can be sold, and that's clear in the legislation. That the land can be sold. It is the use of the property that is restricted. So the subsequent purchaser has to continue the farming or forestry use of the land. Now, as it relates to federal guidelines on farm subsidies or tariff implications, we would have to look at those as they come out, but we can't speak to that. I can't speak to that right now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Next up, we've got Chairman Reedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And of course, question for you, once this piece of legislation passes out of here, it will return to government operations for rulemaking authority. Is that correct, sir?
You're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right. Next up, we've got Representative Sherrill.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a question about, so if I have 50 acres of, say, timberland or farmland, whatever you want to say about it, and I decide that I put it in this program, and then I decide I want to sell this property, so will it be a continuous, or will there be an option some way that the next buyer could opt out of this program? Will it continue?
You're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. The conservation easement is permanent. It runs with the land, so the subsequent owner would have to maintain the land as agriculture or forestry land.
Okay.
Representative Sherrill.
So there's nothing in this bill that would give a person that you sell it to say opt out, maybe even with a penalty or anything like that. And there's no way of getting out of it.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, this is a permanent easement that runs with the land.
Okay.
Representative Sherrill, any follow-up?
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Representative Renaud.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Lewis, in the legislation on page 3 at the top, it says that the Department of Agriculture may award a grant to the qualified easement holder or directly to the farmer or forest landowner. Does this mean that in some cases the farmer would own the land, or in some cases a nonprofit could own the land?
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, the legislation never contemplates a sale of the property. The landowner, the farmer or the forest owner always maintains ownership. There is nothing in this legislation that deals with sale of the land. What is included in the legislation and what is contemplated is the conservation easement, which in this scheme, in this plan, is held by a nonprofit entity to ensure that the land is maintained in agriculture or forestry. So that is the qualified easement holder that you see there is the nonprofit entity that holds the easement.
Representative Renaud.
I'm trying to understand why the grant money might go to one or the other and how that's determined.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's a great observation, and what will be fleshed out in the rulemaking process. We wanted to leave open that there could be a situation where a nonprofit entity has covered some of the upfront expenses, and participation in this program will reimburse for those, or so we wanted to leave the department the flexibility to ensure that we made this most advantageous for farmers and forest landowners to participate.
Representative Renaud, any follow-up?
Yeah, one other question. Speaking to Chairman Clemens' point, is there any plan for the rules to include parameters on preventing the money being used or the grant money being given to someone, maybe just an investor who happens to own a lot of farmland versus maybe a farmer who really needs the money or would need it in order to move forward with an easement? Or is it going to be first come, first serve?
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's exactly to Chairman Reedy's point. While the department will promulgate the rules that will establish the parameters for the competitive grant process, that they'll come back before you with those rules.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Mayberry, you're up. Oh, okay, thank you. Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thought I was going to have to show out again. Thank you, Rep. Mayberry. On the, I'm not sure if I understood your response of the question on whether the governor or me or any state employee will be eligible to receive that grant money.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The legislation as it's before you does not establish eligibility criteria.
Representative Hardaway.
So that means that yes, unless we make rules against it, or can we promulgate rules against employees or against any person? Will that fall within the parameters of the legislation?
You're recognized. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I believe that would fall under what the department could promulgate.
Representative Hardaway.
All right, on the issue, and we addressed this, I can't remember what the specific bill was, but there was some concerns about getting locked in to covenants when the original signer may die and it becomes inheritance property, et cetera. Are there provisions within this legislation to account for the death of the primary signer and releasing the property from that obligation?
You're recognized. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, this legislation establishes a program that would allow property owners to enroll in a permanent easement that runs with the land. And the subsequent owners, whether they be heirs or purchasers, are subject to. In the same way that when a public utility runs power lines over a property, that is a permanent easement. Or in the same way that if an owner sells to a developer, that is a permanent choice. So these sorts of permanent choices aren't to be taken lightly. We know from the conversations we've had with nonprofits that are in this space, the conversations that the families have around enrolling in these programs are extensive so that everyone knows that this is a permanent choice that's being made.
All right, Mr. Chairman,
Hardaway.
just a couple of more things I want to get straight on. And I think I heard you clearly. You said it's not duplicating federal programs, that it's more to complement those programs by addressing fees and costs up front. So if we're looking at violations, let's say if I sold my property to Representative Glenn and he decided to do something different with it that would violate the conditions of the contract with for the easement. What are the penalties? How could you enforce the contract itself?
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The terms of enforcement are in the easement itself, the contract that the landowner and the nonprofit easement holder negotiate and agree to Ultimately, it would be the same as any enforcement would be the same as any other contract. That if the two parties get into a dispute, then ultimately to enforce a contract, you could go to court. But what we found is that the landowners that enroll in these programs, they end up having very good relationships with the land trusts that they participate in, because those groups are interested in conserving land just like the landowners are. And so I've not heard of times when they've ended up in enforcement issues like that. Everybody that is participating in this
Just clarification.
wants to.
The rules will address this issue of enforcement and the penalties, et cetera. Are those rules that we promulgate going to include those provisions?
You're recognized.
Sorry. Thank you, Chairman. Perhaps, yes. I haven't reviewed all the 30 different programs across the country that are established, whether departments need to address that issue specifically. But certainly, if we review, if the department and the folks that are involved in that process review and think that we need to speak to that, I certainly think it would be within the authority granted that they could.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure I got a complete commitment there, but I trust the sponsors. So thank you.
All right. Thank you for that. Representative Towns, you're recognized.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Let's see, and you can answer this while we're out of session. There are lots of foreign entities in our country buying land, agricultural land, okay, which at some point concerns a lot of us. Okay, now, what I'm looking for is, let's say, for instance, this is theoretical, hypothetical. We ended up with a crisis of production for certain kinds of food. And this particular bill doesn't have the flexibility, if we had to convert some of that farmland over to produce food to feed our people, is there any flexibility in it at all as it's being written today?
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, this legislation provides wide flexibility that as long as the land is used as a farm for agriculture as defined in Tennessee law, then that's an allowable use. So the landowner could, grow corn one year and then raise livestock the next. The landowner controls the use of the land.
Representative Towns.
Got it. That's what I was looking for. Now, also, if you lived in Tennessee or anywhere in the last week or so, probably 25 or 30 states, we have been receiving torrential rains all over the place. Now, how does this bill impact our wetlands, which are very critical to us as a country, as a people, and plants and everything? If that is not protected, does this in any way or form or fashion, if a farmer has wetlands that's a part of his control and he's farming, but all that's contiguous right there together, how does it impact the wetlands?
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This legislation doesn't speak to that issue.
Representative Towns, last one, if you could.
I have about 10 more, but I'll do it at the next meeting.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And next up, we have Representative Mabry. Are you good?
Can I call for a question? Can I go back into session? Yeah, go back into session.
Back in session. Okay. Anybody, any other questions for the department? And I would like to ask one myself. I heard earlier something mentioned about mortgages. I think it's well established that once somebody enters into this program, that's it. The property's locked down. It's locked into that forever. I heard something brought up about mortgages. If someone were to try and take a mortgage out on a property that they didn't have full control over, I'm not sure how that would look. Have you got any insight on that?
Yes, Chairman. Actually,
we're still out of session. We're still out of session. Out of. That's. Don't tempt me. I'm sorry, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Enrollment in a conservation easement does not limit the ability to mortgage a property. In fact, Farm Credit Mid-America, who is one of the largest agricultural banking institutions in this area, certainly, but they operate in Tennessee, Kentucky, Ohio, Indiana, Arkansas, and Missouri, supports the legislation and doesn't have any issue with farmers enrolling their property in this program.
Okay, thank you for that. Representative Sherrill, do you have a question while we're still out of session?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman. Just one question that I think that this is very important where we are losing our farmland. Let's just say we have 500 acres in, say, I'm going to use White County where I live at. And then we are in need of 100 acres to put a factory there in White County. Through the state has brought in a factory, and we've put the 500 acres in this program. So as a state of Tennessee, will they be able to come and cut that 100 acres out of that 500 to put that factory in there? Or are we just going to lose out?
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That land would have to remain in agriculture. So if it was to be, it wouldn't be able to be sold off and used for other purposes. But again, I'll just circle back that this is the property right of the owner to enroll in this program. The state is not forcing anyone to participate in this program. This is a voluntary program for farmers and forest landowners to participate in.
So if we pass
Sherrill, you're
this,
recognized.
thank you. If we pass this legislation today, and this does come about in your county, we would have to go back through a process probably with another legislation to change it where maybe this factory could have that 100 acres. Would that be correct?
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm not familiar with White County. I would imagine it would be easier to find another 100 acres than come back and change the law on this one. But yeah, it's a permanent program.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. All right. Members, do we have any other questions while we're out of session? Chairman Reedy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Vital, did you have any comment about this at this time? Well, just seeing if he had a question, Mr. Chairman.
No, I would just say this is a long-term family decision. It's about stewardship of property. You can still buy, sell it, mortgage it, develop it within the agricultural forest scope, but it is a decision about preserving farmland long-term in Tennessee. So we have green space. Thank you.
All right. If we don't have anything else for Alex, we're going to go back into session. That's all right. Representative Hardaway, you have a question for legal, it seems. What is your question, sir?
Thank you, Chairman. Whether we can handicap the courts 100% to against any type of challenge on this, or whether this is 100% ironclad and the courts cannot make an exception.
Who'd like to take that?
Alexander Greenberg, Office of Legal Services. This piece of legislation doesn't speak to that at all. And while it is permanent, things can normally still be amended through the court process, and this doesn't prohibit that. Thank you.
Representative Hardaway, you good? All right, thank you for that. All right, we are back in session. We've got Chairman Reedy, do you want to ask a question before we go to that motion?
No.
Okay. We have a question on the bill for positive recommendation. Mr. Clerk, please open the vote. Everybody voted? Anybody wishing to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, the vote is 9 ayes, 3 noes, and 3 present not voting.
All right, you have the majority. Next up for you, Finance, Ways and Means. All right, members, we're going to jump out of order here again. We're going to go to item 22, House Bill number 793 by Lamberth. We have a motion. We have a second. Leader Lamberth, you're recognized on your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very straightforward bill. This gives the LEAs the option to require citizenship documentation. Most of our LEAs currently require a birth certificate from the United States. This will allow them to go a little bit further, require a U.S. citizenship, proof of citizenship in some way. That can be done in a variety of methods. If for some reason a student is not able to provide that, either if they're here illegally or choose not to provide it, then just like if a student was out of zone or out of district, that local LEA may charge a tuition, and it's laid out in the bill. And then if for some reason that family chooses not to pay the tuition, the local LEA may or may not enroll that student. It's their call. And if for some reason they choose not to, then all of that can be appealed up to the Tennessee Department of Education. Mr. Chairman, I stand ready for questions.
Thank you for that explanation. Members, do we have any questions? Representative Hardaway, you're recognized.
Thank you, sir. And to the sponsor, we have some families that find it very difficult to gather documentation, paperwork, whether it's through some type of disaster, a natural disaster, whether it's because we have some transitory families. How do we ensure that those families, citizens like you and I, by birth, how do we ensure that they have an appeals process if the LEAs should rule against them?
Leader Lamberth.
Thank you for asking that question. That's exactly why in this bill, the State Board of Education will promulgate rules, but then TDOE is actually where an appeal like that would go. And so any documentation that they're able to get or able to have would be able to be sent there for an appeal. Now, at the same time, if you're a student that's starting school now, it is extremely unlikely, especially if you're born in the state of Tennessee, that you would not be able to get that documentation. All of that's kept within different government entities.
I'm sorry.
Representative Hardaway.
Yeah, I didn't get the last part.
That information is, if you're born in the state of Tennessee, at least, and most states are like this, like if you need another copy of your birth certificate, that's a pretty easy thing to get a copy of. And so for students that are starting school now, if it was 50 years ago, that might be an issue. But in the modern day age, most of that documentation is pretty easy to get.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you. I think there are some exceptions, and I want to make sure, Mr. Sponsor, we address those exceptions where a family may, through some natural tragedy or circumstance, find themselves without access to that documentation or the guidance on how to get it. So if you would, let's be ready for whatever rules we're going to have to promulgate on this.
Leader Lamberth.
Thank you. And beyond the rules on that, if you'll look at Amendment Code 5269, subsections 3 and 4 there on page 5 specifically lay out that the student, parent, or guardian who files an appeal with the department pursuant to this section is entitled to an expedited hearing before the department and bears the burden of proving by preponderance of evidence that the student meets one of the criteria. And so it's a simple preponderance of the evidence standard. It doesn't have to be 100% by any means. I just need to tip the scales a little bit.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Chairman Clemens, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Several issues with this piece of legislation, and I've really struggled understanding what this is about, because I know it's not about immigration, because our country has a broken immigration system, and this isn't going to fix it. It's going to discriminate against innocent children who have no idea whether or not they're documented or not. So this is an education bill about punishing innocent children. And the one thing I've given up on trying to compel people with empathy or heart, love, anything like that. So I'm going to talk money. And one thing that this thing says in the recitals is that illegal immigration is a drain on state resources. Now, this ain't going to fix illegal immigration. But let's talk about
state resources. This bill would drain over $1 billion in federal funds from the state to carry out an unconstitutional policy. LEAs would lose $70 million plus in TISA funding. The lack of education, there's data across the board showing it can significantly impact life outcomes that would cost the state of Tennessee billions of dollars. Lower earning potential, increased risk of poverty, reduced access to health care, shorter lifespans, higher risk of crime. All these things cost the state of Tennessee money, and all are direct results of kids not finishing high school. 75% of crime in the U.S. is committed by high school dropouts. These are people who don't even have a high school diploma, and here we are voluntarily taking that opportunity away in the land of opportunity. This makes no sense. On a per capita basis, immigrants are about 80% more likely to start a business than U.S.-born citizens. 46% of all Fortune 500 companies were founded by immigrants and their children. 230 companies generated $8.6 trillion in fiscal year 23. If that was a standalone country, they would have been the third largest economy in the world. Immigrant-founded businesses are 35% more likely to have a patent in this country. All of this equals money and benefit to the state of Tennessee. None of this is possible without an education to which these children are constitutionally guaranteed. For a reason, Article 11, Section 12 was adopted in 1978 by the state of Tennessee because one of the part of that constitutional provision that is left out of these recitals is, quote, the state of Tennessee recognizes the inherent value of education. That's part of that sentence is purposely left out of these recitals. But, even prior to 1978, the state of Tennessee, with its foresight and forethought, had a provision that read, knowledge, learning, and virtue being essential to the preservation of Republican institutions. Because we have known from the very beginning, through the course of history, where we have seen increased immigration throughout the periods of United States history, we have seen the value of education to every child. That has never been disputed. We know the negative ramifications of denying education to children. I just read off a whole litany of problems with the legislation and economic ramifications of denying children education. 430,000 immigrants in Tennessee paid $4.4 billion in taxes. That is well over the TISA base amount for their children's education. They are not a drain on the state of Tennessee. If we want to drain funds from the state of Tennessee, deny children an education. There is nothing fiscally sound about this, and we know it's not going to fix the broken immigration system in this country. So if we want to fix broken immigration, call your president, call the U.S. senators, call your congressman, run for office. There's a seat open in the 6th Congressional District. Go to D.C. Go fix immigration, please, because I am sick of dealing with it at the state of Tennessee where we have no jurisdiction. And don't tell me denying children an education is going to fix it. This is not about a broken immigration system or illegal immigration. This is about denying innocent children of their right, of their God-given right, as guaranteed by this state constitution, to get an education as upheld by this U.S. Supreme Court. If I sound frustrated and I sound mad as hell, it's because I am. We cannot keep doing this to our children. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the long rope you've given me and the leash to get this off my chest, but there is nothing in this that speaks to good public policy. There is nothing in here that has even a hint of love in it. We are better than this. We must be better than this as a state. This is not why any of us ran for office. And I find it very convenient, I'll finish here, that we're going to sit up here behind these limestone walls and tell someone else They have to walk into a classroom, take a child by the hand, escort them out of that building, and tell them they can't come back in when not one of us sitting in this room would do it ourselves. And if you would, I question your ability and your talent as a legislator, because you don't belong here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. Leader Lamberth, you wish to respond?
Thinking to my colleague from Davidson County, I'm sure you spent some time over the weekend thinking about that, and I appreciate you sharing it with us.
Representative Fritz, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the sponsor of the bill, I appreciate you carrying it. Lots of energy behind my colleague from Davidson County. We're not talking about immigrants. We're talking about illegals. There is a distinct difference.
Please, folks, we've done a nice job today. Let's keep this civil, please.
There is a
Representative
distinct difference. 14th Amendment, both Section 1 and Section 4 help us understand that. There is no greater act of rebellion in these United States than illegally coming across that border. And so I would offer that when you read the 14th Amendment, take some time with it and understand that that's an all-encompassing document. It is timeless. Those words are timeless. While they were written following the Civil War, and the use of the word rebellion certainly between the Confederacy and the Union. But there is no greater act of rebellion in the United States than to illegally cross into these United States. And the last thing I would offer would be this, that we don't necessarily have a broken immigration system now. President Trump's correcting that.
Thank you for your comments. Any other questions? Seeing none. Clerk, would you please open the board? Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. I got ahead of myself, Clerk. We have got some people that have requested to testify. We've got Mr. Johnny Epstein and Miss Tiffany Anderson. If you guys could, please make your way to the front. We will go out of session for you. Thank you guys for coming forward. You will have 3 minutes, and if you would, let us know who you are and who you're here with. If you're here as a private citizen, by all means, we appreciate that too. And ladies first.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman and committee members. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Tiffany Anderson, and I'm a resident and educator in Bedford County. I'm deeply concerned about House Bill 793 as proposed that will deny children an education. Every day of my educational career, I've taught knowing that students' rights to an education and freedom to learn was protected and secured because the law had long made it clear that public education belonged to all of us. However, House Bill 793 is a direct assault on our children's rights to free and equitable education. It would take away their freedom to learn simply because of who they are or where they were born. To put it in clear terms, this bill is an attack on our values as Tennesseans of the great volunteer state and on our children. But this bill isn't just about education. It has already perpetuated division and distracted constituents from more important issues. All Tennesseans, regardless of immigration status, pay millions into the public school system in state and local taxes, as we've heard, and this bill attempts to use our children as pawns to score cheap political points. In my district in rural Bedford County, we have proudly embraced all students and are committed to ensuring all students of all backgrounds are educated. I've dedicated several years of my career to teaching children, all children. It never mattered their race, religion, socioeconomic, or immigration status. I've watched my students, including undocumented students, grow to become productive members of our community, adding value in areas where there once was no hope. They've started their own businesses, helped build and grow our infrastructure, received scholarships, and go on to prestigious universities, and yes, even become teachers themselves. I never believed that I would have to stand in front of a committee to explain why my students not only should be allowed to continue getting a free public education, but deserve it. And what about those that cannot afford to send their students to school? Districts will undoubtedly face truancy issues and even further decline in literacy rates, perpetuating the cycles of poverty, as we also heard about. How will that affect our nation's future? This bill will force some of the best and brightest out of our public school systems, creating a loss in our next generation of professionals such as doctors, lawyers, and scientists. How do I explain to the students that a few elected officials don't think it's worth investing in their future? Do we really want Tennessee to be known as leading the way in denying children an education? Is this the reputation we want our state to have? I'm not alone in this fight, and educators across the state will continue to fight for the rights of the children of our communities, because when you deny any student a bright future, it affects all of us. Was it not just stated that we don't want to play politics with our students? It would benefit the committee to do more research and analyze the decisions
20
from a
seconds,
statistical standpoint to tell the entire story of how it will affect us all in a collective way. And with that, I urge you to vote no on HB 793.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Mr. Epstein, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, committee, for listening to me this morning.
Oh, please introduce yourself and tell us who you're with.
Yes. My name is Johnny Epstein. I'm an attorney and engineer and a product of Tennessee Public Schools. The amendment to this bill mentions the burden and drain on state resources of educating undocumented children. To quantify this alleged burden and drain, supporters of this bill cite enrollment in ELL classes as a proxy. But as these hearings have revealed, most ELL students are not undocumented, and not all undocumented kids need ELL, so it's a bad proxy. We do have a better proxy, as Representative Clemens has given statistics about the amount of taxes that undocumented families do pay. They pay just like the rest of us. They pay in 2022 over $70 billion in federal taxes, in over $33 billion in state and local taxes. In Tennessee, that number is $315 million annually in state and local taxes. The effective tax rate for the top 1% of Tennessee earners is 3.8%. For undocumented immigrants in Tennessee, their effective tax rate is more than double that. It's 8.4%. So effective tax rate wise, they are paying more. This bill does not make things equal with students paying out-of-district tuition. Out-of-district tuition accounts for location of residence where the student has been paying taxes. Creating another type of tuition based on immigration status does not make sense, and it would create a double tax. This bill asks schools to evaluate not just citizenship status, but legal immigration status, and subject to a final valid order of removal. But even when a person has received an order of removal, deportation is not certain. An immigration judge can still grant relief from removal, asylum, waiver of removal, cancellation of removal for victims of domestic violence, hardship-based waivers, Convention Against Torture, all different sorts of relief, according to the INA statute, which I have right here. This bill is asking schools to use this statute, school staff, to evaluate all those different types of status. This bill is ripe for challenge under the 14th Amendment Equal Protection Clause and perhaps the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Plyler versus Doe stated that charging tuition to undocumented children was not an effective method for an economic problem, and said that it is in fact a ludicrously ineffectual attempt to stem the tide of illegal immigration. Plyler cites Brown versus Board of Education, maybe the most famous case in Supreme Court history, which said education is a right which must be made available to all on equal terms. Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt vetoed a bill similar to this about 2 months ago, and he said, let's not use kids as pawns, political pawns. He is a Republican. This bill will destroy kids' futures while wasting resources. It makes no fiscal sense and no legal sense. Please don't use kids as political pawns, and please vote against this. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Let's see. Representative McKenzie, did you have a question for our guest, for the sponsor? Okay. Members, any questions? Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Chairman. To the attorney, I can't recall your last name.
Epstein.
But you made reference to Attorney Epstein. You made reference to Title VI. Would this be in direct contradiction to the dictates of Title VI?
You recognize, sir.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yes, it is my understanding that it would be against the spirit and the letter of Title VI, that it depends how it would play out in courts, but yes.
Representative Hardaway, follow up?
No, sir, that's sufficient. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Towns, you're recognized.
Thank you as well, sir. Thank you both for your testimony. Attorney, did I hear you make a comment as it relates to education of young people that are in this country as a right versus a privilege. Did I hear that stated somewhere?
You recognize, sir?
Yes, thank you for the question. So a way to think about it is you have fundamental rights, you have benefits, you have privileges. According to Plyler versus Doe and Brown versus Board, it is absolutely a right. Yes.
Representative Towns, follow up.
Yes, sir. Established by the courts, we say, through
By the-
court cases.
Mr. Epstein?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you for
Representative
that. I'd like to get that information before you leave.
Thank you for that. Let's see. Representative McKenzie, you recognized?
He wants to sponsor.
Oh, I'm sorry. My mistake. Okay. Any other questions while we're out of session? Seeing none, we're back in session. Representative McKenzie, I understand you have a question for the sponsor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. To the sponsor, you spoke of the 21.
Representative Maber, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question on the bill.
Question's been called. Mr. Clerk,
So,
please open
so
the
my
board.
question is to
All those in favor? Has every member voted? Any member wishing to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, the vote is 8 ayes and 7 noes.
All right, that's it. The bill passes out to Finance, Ways and Means.
Let's take a 2-minute.
We're going to take a 2-minute recess. All right, members, we're back in session. Chairman Clemens?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a parliamentary inquiry. So the status on that last piece of legislation, I understand there was a disruption, but Representative McKenzie was speaking to the sponsor. And then the vote was taken while he was still recognized. And I'm curious as to how someone else was recognized while Representative McKenzie was currently speaking that led to calling the question. I don't think that's allowed because you have to be recognized to call the question. And nobody else could have been recognized because Representative McKenzie was actually speaking. So I'm curious if we get an explanation as to how that went down.
You want a parliamentary answer from that? From
Yes,
one of
yes, sir.
we're going to track him down for you, and we will get back to that as soon as we get our parliamentarian in here. Next up, we've got item number 3, House Bill 164 by Marsh. We have a motion and a second. Speaker Marsh, you're recognized on your bill, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill today deals with animal chiropractors. We love our vets and we love our animal chiropractors. The primary purpose of this bill is to establish educational standards which must be met by chiropractic physicians and veterinarians who perform animal chiropractic work. Chiropractors and veterinarians that receive additional training and certification in animal chiropractic care should register with their boards and be able to provide chiropractic care on animals. Animal chiropractors have been performing work like this in Tennessee for over 100 years. They've been certified since 1989. They have to have 4 years of college education plus 4 more years of chiropractic degree, and then at least 210 extra hours on how to work on animals. The problem we're having here is some of the veterinarians and the veterinarians and animal chiropractors work together on a lot of things, but some of the veterinarians were saying that these animal chiropractors could not work on an animal unless the animal was taken to the veterinarian first. We're saying these animals are private property and the owner should have a choice to take them wherever they would like. If they want to take them to a veterinarian, that's great. If they'd rather take them to a animal chiropractor, that's great. So that's what we're saying, as long as you've got your own rules and regulations and your boards, that they both can coexist peacefully. With that, I'll answer any questions.
Okay, thank you for that. Representative Fritz, you recognize, sir.
Question for positive recommendation. Motion for positive recommendation.
Oh, we've already got that. Chairman Reedy, you're recognized.
Move previous question.
Previous question's been called. We have objection? Point of order. You're recognized, Representative McKenzie.
Thank you. I think I just heard you say that the initial motion was for a positive recommendation. That was not in the motion. The only thing you said when you called the bill was a motion and a second. I don't know if you're saying that's implied, but those words were never uttered on this or the last bill, which was going to be my subsequent parliamentary inquiry on that one. So I don't know how you got from the introduction of the bill to saying that the positive recommendation is already in place. That's my inquiry.
As we've done so far this session, when we've called up a bill, it has been for a positive recommendation. And then if you choose to vote negatively, then it receives a negative recommendation. You're recognized.
Mr. Chair, I've been out here all year. I think what's happened in the other bills, we've introduced the bills, we've discussed the bills, and then there's at the end, what we will hear was motion for positive recommendation, second, and then we vote on that. Those words were uttered, dare I say, in 90+%. I'm gonna say all, but I don't want to say all. I missed the meeting, but that's been the process heretofore.
And in our Joint Government Operations Committee meeting, you would be correct, sir. Yes, sir, Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And along those lines, that's the reason why I was asking what we were voting on earlier when we had that vote, because I thought that when a motion is made to hear the bill. And I didn't know that it was, and it could be my fault. I didn't know it was implied that, it was a motion for a positive or a negative recommendation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So we have we've taken care of that current standing. We've got a question on the bill is the last motion that I heard made. Do we have any objection? Seeing none, we're on the bill. Mr. Clerk, open the board, please. Anybody wish to change a vote? Clerk, take the vote, please.
Mr. Chairman, the vote is 13 ayes and 2 noes.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. And you are headed out, sir, to calendar and rules. Congratulations. Next bill, House Bill 505 by Representative Gant. We have a motion. Do we have a second for a positive recommendation? We have a motion and a second for a positive recommendation. Representative Gant, would you please present your bill?
Thank you, Chairman and committee. All this bill does is it converts the School Safety Alert Grant Program that we passed last year to a statewide 2-year safety alert grant program. It removes the limit on the number of grants that may be awarded in a fiscal year. It creates a separate fund within the general fund to be known as the School Safety Alert Grant Fund.
Thank you for that explanation. Members, do we have any questions? Representative Towns, you recognize, sir.
It's not significant. Thank you, sir. Sounds good, but tell me, Mr. Sponsor, Representative, where does the money come from? Is it general fund or where's it coming from?
You recognize Representative Kim.
Yeah, as it states in the legislation, it comes from the general fund designated for specifically this program.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, members, we're ready to vote. Mr. Clerk, open the board, please. Has every member voted? Anyone wish to change a vote? Clerk, take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, the vote is 14 ayes and 0 noes.
Thank you for that, Clerk. You passed out Finance, Ways, and Means.
Thank you, Chairman.
Next up, we have item number 5, House Bill 675.
Motion for positive recommendation.
By Chairman Faison. You are recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the positive recommendation motion. So I actually have one of the best bills that you're going to hear today. This is House Bill 675, and it's centered around removing state mandates that reduce teaching and learning while still maintaining our accountability system. This means educators are going to have more time to provide direct classroom instruction rather than teaching to a test. Some of our teachers will get weeks of instructional time back to better serve their students as professionals, not test administrators. High school students will be focused on college and career readiness and tests instead of end-of-course tests. These tests can provide tangible value to them, such as financial aid for college or industry certification in their field. Duly noted, often when we see somebody's doing something good, when it comes to education, we need to take note. And the testing schedule in this legislation closely matches those required by high-performing such states such as Georgia and Massachusetts, North Dakota. Massachusetts, the highest performing state in the nation by many indicators. Both Georgia and North Dakota have ACT scores and AP exam pass rates well above the national average, and here in Tennessee. The bill also makes changes to teacher evaluations that would free principals to be instructional leaders in their schools by doing away with unnecessary annual evaluations for successful teachers. And this allows administrators to work with teachers that need help instead of wasting their time evaluating teachers they already know are effective. And I will get sign-on sheets for all of y'all who know how good of a bill this is.
Thank you for that explanation. Looks like our first signer on is Chairman Clemens.
I love everything you said, Mr. Chairman, but I have some questions about some of the details. This requires students with an IEP to be allowed testing accommodations while taking the TCAP. Does those accommodations include language assistance services? Because I've introduced legislation to that end. I think if you receive language assistance services throughout the school year, you should benefit from those on the TCAP as well. Does this allow that?
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Chairman Clemens, I'm not sure of that portion of the bill. Be happy to go to legality. I don't know if the bill even speaks to that. That's covered in a different section of the code, from my understanding.
Okay. Representative or Chairman Clemens?
Just for clarification, I'm assuming this is the bill as amended with 6055 on it. Is that the right amendment?
That is correct.
Yes,
Okay, thank you. And then my next question is, I love eliminating some of the testing and giving them more time to teach. What is the thinking behind requiring the statewide standardized assessments to comprise a percentage of their final grade for the spring semester? I have concerns about that.
Chairman Faison?
Working with the original sponsor on this, instead of having one test be the deciding factor, this is spreading out multiple factors that the local teachers and educators can deem best what's best for the child and see how they're doing, not just from one test to see how they're doing, but to spread it out as a multi way of deciphering if the child is learning or not.
Kind of spreading the weight, it sounds like. Yeah. Chairman Clemens?
Yeah, well, I mean, sorry, when I came up through our public schools, all of our various tests throughout the semester were comprised our grade. Our final TCAP or standardized assessment didn't have any factor on our final grade in that course. It was just for accountability and assessment purposes. So I'm wondering why we're putting that in there or requiring that be a percentage of the student's final grade. If we are really interested in spreading this out as we learn the material, because, standardized assessments, students test differently on those than others, and it doesn't necessarily reflect their full understanding. So I was just curious as to why we're requiring that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions? Representative Hardaway, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. To the sponsor, will this legislation prevent charters from administering their own tests or testing that might replace those tests?
You're recognized.
No.
You're recognized, sir.
All right, thank you.
All right. Members, any other questions? Representative Towns, you're recognized, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I'd love to see someone presenting a bill with a little bit more confidence as this gentleman back here, because I don't think he has any confidence. So if he could restart and give it to somebody else with a little bit more confidence, I'd be greatly appreciated.
You want to touch that?
No,
Can I rule somebody out of order if I'm not the chair?
I think I know the nature in which it was intended. All right, members, seeing no further hands here, we're going to open up the board, Mr. Clerk. Everybody ready to vote? Cast your vote. Anybody wish to change their vote? Seeing none, Clerk, take the vote, please.
Mr. Chairman, the vote is 13 ayes, 0 noes, and 1 present not voting.
Thank you for that. And you are on your way to Finance, Ways and Means. The next item we have House Bill 197 by Leatherwood. We have a motion. We have a second. Representative Leatherwood, you are recognized, sir.
Thank you. And it's my understanding the amendment is traveling with the bill and doesn't need to go on.
That is correct.
Okay. This bill would just require the Department of Transportation to develop and implement a policy for the removal of homeless and property used for camping on dangerous locations on state and interstate highways. With that, I appreciate your support.
Thank you for that explanation. Members, do we have any questions for our presenter? Representative Hardaway, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. I think the sponsor knows I'm going to vote no, unless your bill makes some allowances for providing resources to those same people that we're talking about that are homeless. So does your bill make any resources available for these folks?
You're recognized.
Thank you. In section 1, B of the bill, the department shall, not may, but shall, develop and implement policy pursuant to this section through partnerships with municipal and county government, local law enforcement agencies, Department of Safety, and to your point, local homeless coalitions, local and state housing authorities, nonprofit organizations, and other entities that provide transitional housing and related services to persons experiencing homelessness. So this does require, shall, the Department of Transportation to enter into a memorandum of understanding with these organizations whose purpose is to help and provide services to these people, again, who are camping in dangerous locations. The bill says that too, the shoulder, berm, or right-of-way of highways, under a bridge or overpass, or within an underpass of highways. So those are the dangerous areas that this bill addresses, and those are the agencies that the department is required to enter into a memorandum of understanding to help these people get to a safer location.
Representative Hardaway, any follow-up?
Yes, sir. And I certainly appreciate the spirit, sir. In the fiscal note, is the state obligated to provide funding for these organizations or directly to the citizens who are impacted?
You recognized.
This bill as amended has no physical note, and funding for Department of Transportation or local governments or any of these entities would take place somewhere else in the budget. This bill doesn't address that.
Any follow-up, Representative Hardaway?
Well, it's going to take me a minute to digest that answer, so not right now, sir.
Okay, next up, Representative Towns, you recognize, sir.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Sponsor, seemingly we're trying to make provision where if these people are moved and for their safety, according to what we're saying, and obviously that's a good thing. The question of it is do we follow up to make sure, you know, when you're poor, you're considered as persona non grata. Nobody wants to be around you. People don't care about your opinion or your humanity, essentially. So do we follow up to make sure that where these people are actually transitioned to, that they're able to stay there as well? If you're homeless, you know, many of us, we're not going to choose unless there's something psychological wrong, which means they may need a hospital or a healthcare facility or drugs or something like that. Things happen, you know. So the other people that are on the street, lost a job or healthcare crisis or a child or divorce or something, are we following up to make sure that those people, if they only have outdoors to dwell, that they're not being pushed off that spot as well?
Mm-hmm.
You recognized.
One thing first, I won't paraphrase it exactly. I'm sure what you said, that poor people, homeless, people don't want to bother with them. That frankly is one of the things this legislation is trying to address. That's what's happening now. It's easy to ignore and be blind to the problems. This bill, again, the Department of Transportation shall develop and implement a policy. So we're trying to address one of the key points you made in your statement. As far as the follow-ups, this legislation does not require a follow-up. It would not put follow-ups in the law. But one of the reasons we are here in government operations is because the department will promulgate rules. If this committee wants that to be in the rules, well, y'all will get to look at the rules, vote on the rules, and adjust the rules at that time. And I would have no problem with saying there needs to be a follow-up.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, sir.
Thank you. If any further questions? Seeing none, Representative Hardaway, did you want to be recognized?
Thank you, Chairman.
Again?
That was my please recognize me move.
Yes, sir. Well done.
Are there any, and there's a section in here that speaks to declaring personal belongings that aren't moved or removed in 10 days as trash or garbage. Did I read that correctly?
You recognized.
You might not be on Amendment 4391. There's a 10-day notice here that nothing, there has to be a notice made, and then nothing can happen for 10 days. But then in that 10 days, that's when, you should already have the memorandum of understanding in place. And then it gives 30 days to actually implement the policy. Now, these agencies going in to move the people will move their belongings as well. I guess it could depend on how you define garbage, but I know people have mentioned some of the homeless can have important papers and so forth. Well, that wouldn't be garbage. The agencies moving the people would move their belongings as well. Then, what's left, there can be drug paraphernalia, there can be different things left after the people and the property are removed. So.
Representative Hardaway, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, and I was reading from A2.
Yeah.
Posting a notice to vacate at the camping removal site at least 10 calendar days prior to initiating camping removal operations that include notification that any personal property remaining at the site past the notice date of removal will be determined to be trash, garbage, or other debris and will be disposed of accordingly. I would feel more comfortably if it spoke to the issues that you just cited, that there could be some personal items in there that are necessary, personal papers, identification, medical records, it could be anything. I would feel more comfortable if you spoke to those in the legislation specifically, or if you can include those in your legislative intent.
You recognize.
Okay. And there's notice made and nothing can happen or nothing happens during that 10-day notice. And then there's a 30-day period for removal of the people and their possessions. So I guess reading of this, it could make it seem like in 10 days, the cleanup will start, but that 10 days is just a notice at the end of the 10 days. It's 30 days that they have to clean the site up. And actually, there's an extension on the 30 days. The Department of Transportation cannot move in if anyone is still there. So after 30 days, if someone is still there, the department cannot move in to clean up. But again, it could come down to, as I said, your definition of trash or garbage. I would hope the entities which I named, when they move people and their possessions out, would move out any belongings that the homeless people wanted to hold on to. And I would hope they would check the area. If there's a birth certificate laying on the ground, I would hope they would get it. And I think 30 days is ample time for them to make sure that they've gotten, valuable or important property of the people that were camping there.
All right, thank you for the effort, but I think we need to pay close attention when we promulgate rules, Mr. Chairman, for this, that we make allowance for the fact that we have homeless folks who won't be able to follow those rules and this code that once it becomes law, and they're going to need some extra help, some extra assistance, and I'm just not comfortable with folks who we know a good percentage of that population have either mental illness or the inability to deal with reality. So they're going to need some extra assistance, and I'd like to see that addressed in writing. But I'm willing to fight for it in the promulgation of rules. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, sponsor.
Thank you for your comments. Chairman Reedy, you're recognized.
Move previous question.
Questions being called? I'm sorry, Chairman, I've got some people that have come here that want to speak today.
Withdrawn.
All right, thank you, sir. We're going to go out of session here. Is Elizabeth Mallard in the room? We are out of session. Ms. Mallard, please come forward. We'll put a light on your microphone there. And if you would introduce yourself and who you were with. And
My
you'll have-
name's
I'm sorry, 3 minutes, please.
My name's Liz Mallard. I'm here representing all my unhoused friends. I also serve on the Homeless Planning Council. I'm asking you to say no to the campsite removal bill. I myself was homeless for over 10 years. I can sit here and tell you all the times I had to get a new ID, social security card, or a new set of medication because weather was taking it all away, just like what we've been having actually. I could tell you how hard it was to be able to find a phone to contact a provider to get a new one, and then how hard it was to stay in that same area to get it when it came in to take me to get an appointment to get me one. I could tell you the time I got my ID and suddenly wound up in the hospital only to get released to a flooded, demolished camp that's taken everything again, leaving me to only start from scratch. And starting from scratch with no way to reach anyone makes you ask yourself if it's worth it. You realize getting an ID again that you'll also need a social security card, and asking for that so many times starts looking messy, flagging the system, which then delays an already delaying process. But for me, after finally getting my information needed for transitional housing, I had to then wait for the funding to come in to find a place. Then after finding one, having to wait for the second round of people to go from the camp. Once I was in transitional housing, I stayed in it for another 8 months while my caseworker was looking for housing, accepting Section 8 vouchers. That process alone was there when funding and housing were available. So without those things, where will people go? If your first thought is the shelters, the reality is shelters aren't for everyone. There's medical reasons, mental health reasons, there's issues of splitting up families and so on. So with that in mind, are there enough shelters that would fit everyone's needs? There are so many factors that haven't been brought up, but with what has, I don't think they've really sunk in, but hopefully it will sooner rather than later. But with all I have shared of my experience, take that and multiply it by 2, 3, or 5 people. Try to get all that accomplished in a week, 10 days, or even a month. There's so many tasks at hand: funding, documents, locations, medications, and more for each person. It's just not practical in that amount of time. I'm asking you to put yourself in that situation, waking up with only what you have on your back, going and finding someone willing to let you use their phone to call information, to then call for a caseworker to come and start the whole process for you to find immediate housing. You may say, no, it can be temporary until permanent's available. Well, to us out there, it means we are being stuck over here now. So if you're still having a hard time seeing my point, I always tell people to look at that person as if they were your brother, mother, or even
seconds,
child.
please.
How much time would you take to grab everything and look for a safe place for them to eat, sleep, and just exist? Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Members, we have a question for our witness, Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, ma'am, for being here and representing that population of the unhoused. Is there something in place? Are there any means for the temporary relocation of what in essence is your home? The assets, whether it's your bedding, whether it's the food, etc. Is there something in place with all of these organizations that is a steady service that's available to the unhoused if this bill goes into place and these camps are demolished, removed, et cetera. 10 days, does that seem reasonable?
You're recognized.
There's no way, and I'm not exaggerating, and I'll get emotional about it. It took me over 2 years to get enough caseworkers to just get that identification. And I don't know literally how many times I got that lost or stolen. And it wasn't the fact of me not being able to pick it up or find it. Finding a place to keep it dry, everything is hard enough. Not having, even if I have a caseworker, if there's enough for everybody. The population, we see it every day on the streets, everywhere you go. How many people do you see throughout the day? Is there enough to go and get everyone, every bit of those resources, which are already, where's the funding to get it? I mean, you don't just pull an ID or pull, the bedding or the housing or the food out of nowhere. And so if you have nothing of that, where are you going to get to put them to then put their stuff in there? All it's going to lead to is shoving them over here with nothing and creating another problem and just another neighborhood. Because from my understanding and from my experience, finding somebody and then keeping on hold on them, like where they're at, where they're located, to get them the identification and then to find the housing. And shelters, if we're talking about mental health and everything, I suffer from bipolar and manic depressant. I take medication. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I've been housed for 4 years and I'm 4 years sober. A lot of this stuff was not able to address until I was able to focus on not trying to hold on to my stuff, to look for housing, to keep everything, to try to survive. So I don't know how all the stuff that you're going to need to house each person is going to be provided. I don't know for a fact, and I know that we can say it all day, but is there money to go get the totes, to watch everybody's stuff, to put everybody's stuff in an organized manner, to then get them into a place to set it all up? It's just going to be a repeat from my understanding of the same thing we're in right now. It's just removing this problem to another area without any of the resources or the funding or anything. And it's just tends to leading into more drugs, alcohol, some mental health issues start developing on top of everything because they're just getting scrambled. I mean, we get told all the time that we're going to find you this, but where are the totes? When they put the stuff in the totes, where are the totes going to go? And who's their provider going to be to do all that? And who's the provider, if they're doing just that, going to get the person their ID? And then who's going to go and get, it's the process. There's not enough people. There's not enough resources. If they had every resource in line and did it for one person, there's no way you could even get it done in a month.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I would do a disservice to try to follow up on that. Thank you, ma'am, for being here.
Thank you. Representative Towns, you're recognized.
Yeah, just short and sweet for me. First, thank you for your courage. Thank God for where you are today. Pray the Lord that you stay there for the rest of your life, okay? What do you suggest that we do for that population? Just tell me as succinctly as you can, as short a time as you can, what should people like us be looking to do for the population that is currently unhoused?
You're recognized.
It's kind of an open-ended, long-going question.
Just give it to me.
What would you do for your own child? Do you have the resources, everything? Just what would you do? Just handed that right there. Because this is a person that you don't know, that we don't know the situation they're going through, so we have nothing to work off of. And
right. Do this for me. Children, grown folk are going to take care of them, but I'm talking about adults now, 20 years old, 19 years old, whatever. See if you can structure it right in there. And if you can't, I understand. You may need a little thought, a little later.
I started drinking when I was 18. When I moved into my apartment, I cried to my mom because I didn't know how to work the thermostat on the wall. It doesn't matter any of that, because the time from it being on the wall, just being a knob, to being digital, I didn't understand. So you could be 20, you could be 40, you could be 60. Everybody's different.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? All right, seeing none, we'll go back into session. Thank you for your testimony today. Questions for the sponsor? We have a question on the bill. Mr. Clerk, open the board if you would. Members? Has every member voted? And does any member wish to change a vote? Mr. Clerk, count the vote, please.
Mr. Chairman, the vote is 8 ayes and 5 noes.
All right, your bill passes out to calendar and rules. Next up, item number 7, House Bill 979 by Chairman Williams. We have a motion and a second. Chairman Williams, you are recognized on your bill, sir.
Thank you, Chairman and members. This bill simply stated would allow communities with a population less than 105,000 to be able to employ anesthesiologists, radiologists, pathologists, and emergency room physicians, which they currently, for the last 30 years, haven't been able to do. I'm happy to answer the questions that any of the members might have.
Thank you for that explanation. Members, any questions? Representative Hardaway, you have a question.
Yes, sir. To the sponsors, this connected with certificate of need and all those inhibitions that keep just pure supply and demand
Chairman
from
Williams?
being effective.
Not in any way.
Representative Hardaway?
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Questions been called. Clerk, open the vote, please. Has every member voted? Any member wish to change a vote? Seeing none. Ms. Clerk, take the vote, please.
Mr. Chairman, the vote is 11 ayes and 1 no.
Thank you, sir. Next stop, Finance, Ways and Means. Next item, House Bill 117. Oh, excuse me, folks. Passed that one. No, right. All right, 1175 by Representative Williams. We have a motion. We have a second. Chairman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman and members. This bill is a follow-up to a TASER bill last year that does 3 things in order to make daycare more accessible to our communities. It gives child care centers the same ability to grant that we granted for charter schools to be able to use vacant or underutilized property. It also addresses that school-based child care programs like the YMCAs could be utilized similar to a daycare. And the final piece of the legislation, it reclassifies child care home, family residential properties to allow for that to happen as well. With that, Chairman and members, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you for that explanation. We've got a question from Representative Renaud.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Chairman Clemens.
Sponsor, are you aware if these underutilized buildings, are they evaluated for mold or other hazardous toxins before being rehabilitated for use? We had a couple of interesting situations in my district where schools were taken over in these buildings and then had to be moved out because the buildings had been empty for so long, and there ended up being some major issues.
You recognize?
Thank you. Currently, whenever a property for a charter school, or in this case, a daycare, is being considered vacant or underutilized, it's the responsibility of the person who's leasing or buying that property to do the necessary inspections for what you're talking about prior to them occupying or signing on to a lease as a part, that way to alleviate the liability from the school system or whoever it might be at the time.
Follow up? Okay. Chairman Clemens, you're recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does this give these child care agencies priority over the charter schools to get access to these school buildings?
You're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Clemens. It would be more like a second right of refusal as a first. It's the way the language ended up being. But in most cases, vacant property for child care facilities, it would be more readily available because of the size of the daycare facilities. Generally, the square footage need is much smaller.
Chairman Clemens, any follow-up?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so are these privately run child care facilities, or are these LEA run child care facilities? What are these child care agencies? Are they limited to nonprofits, or what is it?
It could be either. For instance, the example that was given in Education Committee was my old high school, Sullivan Central High School, moved a high school out, moved a middle school in. There was additional property or additional classroom facilities that were underutilized. And so they were able to incorporate into a school-based childcare facility there for staff.
Chairman Clemmons, any follow-up?
No, I'd love to see these have the first right of refusal over the charter schools. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Representative Towns, you're recognized.
Yeah, thank you. Obviously, it sounds like on the surface, a good idea, especially when you have employees that are working there in their child care, or even students, unfortunately, could be housed there simultaneously while they're doing their business of the day. The question becomes, if a regular person that's in the child care business want to access this possibility, would they be able to do it?
You're recognized.
Yes.
Okay, now, that much territory, I find is going to be probably difficult for someone that's running daycares in a community. However, on the flip side of that, guys like La Petite and some of these other major guys that have, they're specialized in that business, are they going to be able to access it as well?
You're recognized.
Thank you. They would. The reason for utilizing underutilized or vacant properties is because, generally speaking, these facilities are designed with life safety code involved. And so if you were to build a new daycare facility in the state, the cost in order to do that is extremely high, in excess of $300 a square foot, just to meet the life safety requirements. What this would do is allow us to repurpose those facilities that have already met and been grandfathered in for life safety purposes, which makes it overall more affordable, whether it's La Petite or London Bridge or your local family who started daycare in their own community.
Representative Towns, last one, please.
Obviously, I think that's, as I said earlier, I think it's good. The key of it is if we're in our communities, I'd love to see our community, small businesses have an opportunity to compete and secure those kinds of spaces versus, some of the other guys, the big box store type guys. And it makes it difficult if they come in and decide to swoop it in and take as much of it as they possibly can. It's going to leave our regular guys out. And I'd like to see that homegrown touch, those small business guys and gals with an opportunity to take full advantage of those spaces as well, because they live in the community and they are about it. And they're going to know many of the people that are bringing their children there as well. So just something to consider.
Thank you for the comment. Representative Hardaway, you're recognized.
My question was addressed. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Members, further questions? Seeing none, questions been called. Any objections? Seeing none. Mr. Clerk, open the vote, please. Has every member voted? Any member wish to change their vote? All right, Mr. Clerk, take the vote, please.
Mr. Chairman, the vote is 10 ayes and 3 noes.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Chairman and members.
You're off to calendar and rules. And the next item up, we have House Bill 894 by Chairman Todd. We have a motion. You have a second. You are recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. What this bill does, it reconstitutes a board that has been in place for about 60 years or so and has some improvements made to the board of groundwater management. This is a board that licenses well drillers primarily. And one of our most precious resources in this state is our groundwater. And we want to make sure that's protected and folks don't get sick and we don't pollute something that is a resource for potentially thousands of people. This expands the board to include an alternate for each of the members from the private sector, as well as solidifies when they meet. It also makes it clear how the board vets candidates for licenses. So with that, I'll be glad to take any questions.
Thank you for that explanation. Members, do we have any questions for the sponsor? And did you want to put the amendment on here today, or do you want to save that for?
I did want to ask if that was traveling with the bill or not. I have amendment 7058. It's not.
Motion for amendment. Second.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second on the amendment. All those in favor of adopting the amendment indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, amendment's on the bill. Now, do we have any questions for our sponsor? Representative Hardaway, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. To the sponsor, how would this impact our aquifers in West Tennessee?
You're recognized, sir.
it would continue to protect them. Right now, if this board goes away, then I would say there's a great risk to our aquifers across the state.
Any follow-up?
Yes, sir. I want to thank the sponsor for protecting Memphis's Jesus water, 2,000 years old.
Thank you for that. Members, any other questions? Representative Towns?
Question on the bill.
Question's been called. Mr. Clerk, please open the board. Members, you know what to do. Anybody want to change a vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, the vote is 11 ayes and 1 no.
Thank you for that. Your bill passes out to Finance, Ways and Means.
Thank you.
Next up, we have House Bill 1359 by Chairman Littleton. We have a motion. You have a second. You're recognized, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is called the Foster Child Bill of Rights. It requires that any foster child in custody of the Department of Children's Services or any agency that contracts with the DCS has the right to go to school and receive an education that fits the child's age and individual needs, benefit from appropriate care and treatment in the least restrictive setting, live in a safe and healthy environment, report any violation of personal rights without fear or retaliation, receive medical, dental, vision, and mental health services as recommended to be appropriate, professional, and be informed with diagnoses and treatment options, and be free from punishment in the form of restrictions on or supervision or contact with any of the legal representation, including an appointed guardian ad litem, an attorney ad litem, or appointed counsel to whom the foster child has the right to confidential communication.
Thank you for that explanation. Members, do we have any questions? I've got just one comment to add to you. This comes from a family situation. We had a little girl in our family, about 12 or 13 years old, thought it'd be cute to call the police and tell the police that her parents had been abusing her when actually nothing had happened. Item number 4 in this Bill of Rights allows for someone to make those calls. Is there anything that has anyone talked about the possibility that someone might abuse item 4 there? Has that come up in any conversations?
It has not.
Okay. Well, I hope my niece hears about this story and somewhat is embarrassed by it one day. All right. Members, any other questions? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. Mr. Clerk, open the board, please. Oh, my apologies. Members, my apologies. I forgot. We have got someone here to speak. Miss Ella Brennan, are you in the room? Yes, ma'am.
I think she left because she said if she didn't need to testify.
Okay.
Because we were so far behind.
All right.
So-
Thank you for that. All right. Back to the vote. Well, let's go ahead. Clerk, the board is open. Thank you. Everybody place your votes. Everybody place their votes. Place your bets. Yes. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, the vote is 11 ayes and 0 noes.
Thank you for that. Chair Lady Littleton, you're off to calendar and rules.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee.
Yes, ma'am. Next item up, House Bill 372 by Chairman Halsey. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Chairman Halsey, you're recognized on your bill, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee. Some of you deal with this and know, but some might not know that the way Medicare and TennCare are portioned out, you have a commercial rate up here, and then about half of that's a Medicare rate, and then half of that or less than half of that is the Medicaid rate. And what's happening is that the Medicaid rate is so low that doctors are beginning now to refuse to take TennCare people because they can't even pay their overhead. The ones that are taking will not take any more than the amount that they're taking. We have to fix this at some point, and that's what this bill attempts to do. I'm trying to get to finance to argue this part of it, but this bill does set out a payment fee schedule that brings the TennCare rate up to either the commercial rate or the Medicare rate, whichever is higher.
Thank you.
Just for your information, TennCare here in Tennessee sitting on 1.5 billion in reserves. And this year they are turning back in 670 million. But we got to fix this. And that's the bill.
Thank you for that explanation. Representative McKenzie, you recognize, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to the sponsor, I appreciate the way you laid it out. What's that difference up here and up here? Roughly, do we pay about half of what private pay or regular insurance will pay?
Thank you.
Less?
Yes, the Medicare rate is about half of what the commercial rate is. The TennCare rate is half or less than half of what the Medicare rate is.
Representative McKenzie, follow up.
Yeah, and has that been increased? Has that difference in price, has that been increasing or decreasing over the year? And that may be an unfair question. I don't know how much.
That's a great question. I'm sorry. It's a great question, and I really don't know what the answer is.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Members, any other questions? Representative Hardaway, you recognize, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And when we look at the budget requirements on this, the federal government will do reimbursements on these rates, whether it's the current or the future rates, correct?
You're recognized.
Yes, that has to be our ask. I don't agree with the assessment the fiscal review did because they didn't factor in the issue that if you got somebody who's going to a primary care doctor and they're getting the help that they need, that keeps them out of the emergency room. If they don't or can't go to a primary care, and let's say to be treated for diabetes, and so they don't get any treatment, then it becomes critical. Then they go to the ER, and if they cut off a foot or a leg, then the cost is astronomical. So you save money when we set up a system where people can get the primary care they need.
Representative Hardaway, follow.
Thank you. Good bill. Humanitarian aspect of it is immeasurable. Thank you for the bill.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Mr. Clerk, would you open the board, please? Has every member voted? Anybody wish to change a vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, the vote is 11 ayes and 1 no.
Careful what you wish for. You're off the Finance, Ways and Means.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next up, House Bill 581 by Chairman Doggett. We have a motion. You have a second. You're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I know you all have had a very long day thus far. But House Bill 581 would provide more transparency with online campaign contributions in our state elections. It will require online campaign donation platforms to register as a vendor within the Tennessee Registry of Elections. It also required the CVV, which is that 3 or 4 digit code on your credit or debit card, to be used on any contribution that is made through an online platform. If there's an investigation from the registry, these vendors will have 10 days to provide such information regarding any online contribution in question. And it also incorporates identity theft statute if someone uses a credit or debit card to make a political contribution to a vendor without that person's express consent.
Thank you for that explanation, Chairman Clemens. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a really concerning piece of legislation because no member of this body, well, first of all, it doesn't include all state candidates. It doesn't include the governor who's a candidate for state office like we are. But this is really concerning in that, the primary amount of donations that are given from individuals across the state of Tennessee are given online. None of us have credit card processing faculties or abilities ourselves, so we necessarily rely on processors like WinRed, which is commonly used by Republicans, ActBlue, which is commonly used by Democrats, and others, just to name a few. And to say that we're going to limit individuals from donating online is really concerning. The only people who primarily donate by check are corporations, special interest groups, lobbyists, and some of their PACs. So it seems to be here that we're giving preferential treatment to those groups and discriminating against individuals. I have a real concern with the freedom of speech aspect of this and the ability for this to be upheld in a court, but also the practical side of this. I don't understand how this is going to increase transparency because we disclose every single person who donates over $100 or more to our campaigns. And we seem to be taking away the ability for them to donate. Why are we doing this? What's the genesis of this?
Chairman Doggett, you're recognized.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. So over the last year, I read numerous articles about something that's called smurfing, where someone makes a campaign contribution online in someone else's name to candidates, or one candidate who would receive a contribution from multiple individuals, but it may have come from one person who had used an alias or a fake name, but it was still made through the same payer. And so what we're trying to do is to eliminate that opportunity for smurfing by putting in, when you have the CVV in there. I know you also brought up the fact about online contributions, regulating that. If you have a financial institution that is linked to your campaign, personal campaign website, this bill would not be in that. It wouldn't fit that criteria. It's looking for these third-party vendors whom you're paying for a service to come in out of hopes that they will collect all the data, because we make best efforts. A lot of times I still get checks. I get checks from individuals throughout my district. I don't use online fundraising of any sort through my website. I don't use any kind of campaign contribution fundraising site like you had mentioned. I know that we have members that do, but if you have that, if you can link a financial institution to that where it can go directly to you instead of through a third party, we're wanting these third party vendors to register with the Bureau of Ethics, and then they will be given the criteria that they need to capture. Because going back, a lot of times we make best efforts to know who the individuals are that are giving to us. We have to verify their home address, their place of employment, all of those things. A lot of times if we're getting stuff online, we can't verify that it actually was that individual who had given to us. Now, maybe locally, if someone locally would given to me online, I could verify that because I see them at the grocery store or the gas station fairly regularly, maybe at church. People giving from outside our districts, we have a hard time tracking those individuals down. And so that's the whole purpose of this, is to capture that information to make sure that we're getting who it is that's actually giving to us, because if not, then we end up having to try to return that money back, those funds back, or we end up having to give them to charity.
You're recognized.
Thank you. Well, with that stated purpose of the legislation, I think there's a more limited way to do this and to prevent people from donating in someone else's name or using someone else's credit card. I mean, there's laws already on the books to prevent that, but even if we wanted to pass a bill to prevent that, we certainly could. And I understand that's part of your legislation here, but the 50% cap on using these platforms is really problematic. Because like I said, your financial institution, my bank, for instance, it's not going to process credit card donations for me. I can't set up a link to my bank for them to process credit card donations or otherwise online. And I understand they're excluded by the definition of vendor here. But like I said, the examples I used earlier, WinRed or ActBlue or some of these others, they do all this vetting. They take all this information. They get the employer. They comply with every state law, federal law, to be able to perform this function. And so I don't know why we're capping that at 50%, because that's really going to silence the voices of a lot of individual contributors and give a lot of preferential treatment to the entities that primarily donate by check, even though I guess check is always preferred. Nobody's taking a fee out of it. But I think if your stated intent is to limit people from smurfing or disguising as someone else, there's a way to do that without that 50% cap. And I would request that we tailor this back to that end. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
In your response, Representative McKenzie, you're recognized. I'm sorry, Chairman, let me interrupt. Folks, this is, my apologies. This is going to be our last bill. We've got to get out of here. My sincerest apologies. We will have you back next week. But Representative McKenzie, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, harkening back to my days on county commission, I remember we were having a conversation about electronic devices and people had no way they're going to steal the devices. They're going to play these games, surf porn on the internet, all these bad things. And I think the point I try to make is we're not going to go back to the abacus. Folks, a lot of folks in this room don't know what the abacus is. We're not going back to a slide rule. We're not going back. I personally, you talk about personal, I don't get a lot of personal donations from these WinRed Act Blue. I don't get any from WinRed Act Blue organizations. But those that I do get, they're in much better shape than me trying to call somebody and ask them where they work, ask them what are they retired. They do a good job. Just like my mortgage company does a great job on whatever date that I tell them to draw out my house note. They do a great job. It's going to happen every time. It's going to be perfect. That's what we're dealing with. We're not going to go back. I would get in my car with my mom and dad and we go pay bills. It's Saturday. You're going to go pay bills. And you go take the bill to the place and they sign it out. That's what it sounds like this bill is trying to get us back to. I don't know what days those are. Those weren't fun days. And it's no fun not to have to deal with checks. As Chairman said, the main people to send checks are the lobbyists and those type folks or the entities. So why are we trying to go backwards in this? That's my concern. I get the accountability. I'm fine with the CVV number. I'm fine. Put all that in there. But don't limit us to 50%. Like I said, I'm nowhere near 50%. But at some point, somebody sitting in this seat in the 15th district, someone sitting in your seat, will have a lot more electronic payments than they do people putting a stamp on a letter, licking the envelope, and sending it to our address. I don't know what this bill is, and we're transparent. Let's be real. There might be some bad actors out there. I really don't have a clue what a smurfing and anything else go because it doesn't apply to me. I don't get those large sums, I guess. Don't want to. But my question to you is, why did you leave the governor out? Why
You're
not?
recognized. You're recognized, sir.
When I drafted this bill, I was looking at just merely our state, the General Assembly. That's purely all that I was looking at. And I will say that I've got reports that show, and this is all federal election commissions, but there's a resident in Florida who made over 52,000 contributions under 14 different aliases over 3 years and a month. A California resident made over 52,000 contributions under 9 aliases over 5 years and 10 months. The first person had $387,000 that they had contributed to campaigns, where the latter had 884,000. And so, yes, smurfing, this is a real thing and it's happening. There's been numerous investigations by many different states trying to detail this, because some of these platforms are not capturing accurate information. Yes, candidates are getting names, phone numbers, addresses, things of that nature, but it's not the actual person who made that contribution.
Okay, thank you for that. Representative Brady, you're recognized.
Previous question.
Question's been called. Mr. Clerk, open the board, please. Members, you know what to do. Has every member voted? Any member wish to change their vote? All right. Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, the vote is 6 ayes, 4 noes, and 1 present not voting.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. And you are off, Chairman Doggett, to calendar and rules.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members, remaining audience members, we will roll the rest of our calendar, everything that's remaining, to next week's calendar. With that, we will adjourn.